highlights of my career thus far. I got into a shooting in 2017. It was Super Bowl Sunday, actually, so it was like, February 3rd or something like that. And these cases are closed out, so I don't have any issue talking about them. I'm not going to get in trouble, I guess.
Okay.
But, so anyways, this call came out initially as it came out as a domestic violence, which in Colorado is a couple fighting, basically. It has to be an intimate couple. So it came out as a domestic violence in progress. So we get there, me and this other officer, come to find out that it was a brother and sister fighting, so it wasn't a domestic violence. But turns out the sister was in violation of her parole. She was drunk, and she was, according to her parole, she wasn't allowed to be drunk or drinking at all. So we had to arrest her. I mean, that was a mandatory arrest. We didn't really have any choice in that. And as soon as we hooked her, brother, and they're older, they're like, this guy was in his 50s, I think, maybe 40s or 50s. And she was a little bit younger, probably in her 30s. But, so we arrest her, and he just flipped. And, he was fighting with her leading up to this, screaming and throwing shit at her. But as soon as we put handcuffs on her, we became the enemy. And he started threatening us and saying, you guys are going to be sorry. You're going to make me do something tonight. Or
no, wait, so you're inside the house, or is this outside?
This happened outside.
Okay.
We're in the street. In the driveway in the street, basically. So anyways, he starts threatening us and saying that, he's like, I promise you somebody's going to die tonight. And I'm like, dude, calm down. We have to arrest her, blah, blah, blah. This is going to blow over. So anyway, I told this other officer who has this female in custody, I said, just get her out of here, take her back to the PD so we can kind of defuse the situation. So he leaves. And then I'm trying to calm this guy down, but he won't. And I'm like, well, I just need to leave because otherwise he's going to force me to arrest him or something, and I don't need to arrest him. So I leave. And for whatever reason, I just had that feeling that something was different about this. We get a lot of empty threats. That's 99% of our job is people threatening us. But this one felt different, and I can't really explain why to this day, but I could just see it. I could see it, his conviction. And so anyways, I leave, and I go back to my department, and I'm going up to my supervisor's office to give him the notice for this, because we can put, flags on an address, and that way if, an officer gets dispatched to that address, this flag will pop up with, a caution note or something else. So I'm, thinking I'm going to flag this address because this guy was really not happy with us. And as I'm talking to him, we get a tone. So a tone alert comes out across the radio, and the tones are used for the most serious, in progress calls. And a tone comes out for a hostage. This lady comes in. A lady calls in saying that her husband is holding her and her disabled mother hostage in the house, and he was firing off rounds in his house. And I'm like, they hear the address, and I'm like, motherfucker, that's the address that we were just at.
The tone came across as you were briefing your supervisor about what happened with this guy.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it hadn't even been 5 minutes. So this guy was going through a divorce, was just down on his luck. He was drunk. But anyways, his soon-to-be ex-wife is the one calling in, and her mother is in a wheelchair. She's wheelchair-bound. She can't move. And she's saying that he's holding her in the bedroom hostage. So we go back to the house, and at the moment I got there, he was outside, sitting on the front porch with a revolver, hanging between his legs. But I was across the street, and I was by myself. I was trying to sneak up a little bit. Just because we didn't have all our guys there yet, so I was really just trying to observe what was going on. But anyway, he's sitting on the front porch, and then he stands up and walks back into the house. And to this day, I look back on that. We teach frequently in law enforcement that if you have a hostage scenario, and say it's in a house or a building or whichever. If the bad guy comes out, we're taught he doesn't go back in. You know, if it comes down to it, you have to use whatever means possible to prevent him from going back into the house, because then you lose your advantage. And let's say he goes back in the house and kills the people, and you had him outside. So anyways, that went through my head. The reality was that I didn't have a shot. I was probably 50 yards away from him. I didn't have my rifle. So it just wasn't a possibility. And I wasn't going to shoot, you know, across the neighborhood street 50 yards away from this guy with a 9mm and hope to hit him, you know. So anyways, he goes back in the house. We start getting a plan set up. We set up sort of like a react team to kind of hide on the outside of the house just in case he comes out again. We would bum rush him or do whatever, you know, we had to. So we're getting this react team set up, and they end up calling out SWAT, which actually I was on the SWAT team at this point in time, but I was on patrol. So they activated the SWAT team, and SWAT comes out, and we knock on the door, and I think, or the announcements, we announced with the loudspeaker or something for this guy to come out, and he comes out, or no, I'm sorry. As soon as we announce his name, we hear another gunshot inside the house, and we're like, fuck, like, did he just shoot himself? Did he just shoot a hostage?
No, are you saying this to are you saying this to the other guys in the stack, or are you just, is this going through your head?
Well, me and the guy that I was with, we were discussing that, because we kind of looked back, or we looked at each other and like, fuck, like, what did he just do? But it literally, a couple seconds, like 5 or 10 seconds later, he walks out. So he walks out, and he's holding this revolver. It's a .357 revolver, and he's holding it down, pointed to the ground. And, you know, so we start challenging him. You know, we don't really have an advantage on him, so we can't rush him. He's holding a gun, so, you know, we're not going to put ourselves in that position right away. So there's me and this other guy, probably about 6 feet away from him. And at this point,
you're standing on the front of his property?
Yeah,
okay.
Right off his front porch, basically.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So we went. Funny thing, we actually went up to the house to like hide behind this corner of the house, but when we got up there was no corner, so we were just sucked up against the side of this house. It was a really bad spot. But anyways, he comes out. We're challenging him. He's just holding his gun down, and he's kind of like, you know, got this blank stare, and we're like, this is it's going to go down, because this guy he's not listening to us. He ends up getting down on his knees, and he's still holding the gun. And this went on for probably about 20 minutes, where we were challenging him. We're telling him to drop the gun, everything. We got our negotiator talking to him through a loudspeaker, and that's not working. I mean, this guy's just motivated. And what he was doing, you know, in hindsight, he was pushing a suicide by cop scenario. I feel have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So, you know, we didn't know that. You obviously can't like predict that, but looking back on it, that's exactly what he did. And he's not putting the gun down. We're challenging him. And we come down to like the final few minutes, and he starts counting down from like, I think it was like 10. You know, he starts off at 10. And I'm like, we got to make a decision.
So what is he counting down to, though? What was going to happen at the end of 10?
No idea.
Okay. He didn't make that clear?
He kept telling us to no, you know, his only demands were that we let his sister go. And we're like, we can't do that, you know. And then he was telling us to shoot him, and we're like, we're not going to shoot you. Like, we want to resolve this peacefully. But then nothing was happening. You know, we weren't shooting him. He wasn't doing anything to us. We weren't releasing his sister, so he just gets in his head that he's going to start counting down, and we have no idea what's coming. So he starts counting down from 10, and then I'm like, I've got a taser in one hand, and I've got my 45 in my other hand, and I'm like, I'm going to tase him. I'm going to try and disable him for like 2 or 3 seconds so we can bum rush him and take him into cuffs. So he gets down to like 2, and somebody airs on the radio, like, do it. And I stand up and I tase him, but he was wearing this big heavy coat, and one of the probes hit his coat, and then the other probe hit the ground in front of him. So it didn't make a complete connection. which, if with the way tasers work, both probes have to hit the body, or really close to the body for it to work and disable you. And it didn't happen with this. So, but I didn't know that at the second. So I tased him simultaneously. Me and this other guy, we stand up and we start rushing him, and he kind of like keels over at first when he gets tased. So we think it worked, and then as we take like 2 or 3 steps towards him, he gets himself back up and he raises the gun towards me and this guy, and at that point he got lit up. So and he got hit so many times that he was dead instantly, and we run up to him and we start trying to render first aid to him right away, but the paramedics were on scene and they come up and they basically pronounce him dead. It was just really unfortunate. This guy, from my experiences in life, I look at people there are people that, this is going to sound shallow, but there's people that deserve to die and there's people that don't deserve to die. You've got your career criminals and, your murderers and rapists and all these people that, I would say deserve to die. This guy was not one of those people. He was just down on his luck. He was going through a divorce. He had lost his job, I think. Just nothing was going well in his life. But he made up his mind that he wanted to die, and unfortunately, he forced it on us. And his revolver was loaded, and obviously we can't, when it comes down to it, we can't take that chance. So he raised the gun up at us, and that was the final decision he made.
So did anything you did in the military, in the Army, on deployment or not prepare you for this, or was like a similar experience to this, or was this it?
Yeah, I've looked back on my experience in the military, and I'm not, I was never like a hero. I'm not the guy that walks around saying I killed a bunch of people, but by default, we saw a lot of shit in Iraq, and I think I just had that training. I'd been through similar scenarios like that. Like, I have fired my weapon at people before, and I've seen dead people and that kind of stuff. So that to me wasn't a big deal. But for like a few other guys, they walked off after that right away and threw up. And like that just was something that.
What does that make you feel about yourself when that happens though? Like, this is such a significant event to other people that they're vomiting at the site, and you're just kind of like, huh?
It's funny you say that, because there's been a lot of, there's a lot of death in law enforcement. Whether it's like, we got all medical calls where people, a lot of old people die. We see a lot of fatal car accidents. We see, homicides. There's a lot of death. And probably by this point, more than I've seen in the military. It took a few years for that to happen, but, I've struggled with feeling a lack of emotion. In any job, you get desensitized to what you do, whether it's military or law enforcement or you're a doctor, and you work in a ER and you see a lot of trauma patients. Any person that works in these fields, you become desensitized, and you have to, because that's the only way that you can stay professional and keep doing your job. But it's bothered me for a little bit, because I feel like I'm supposed to convey more emotion than I do. Like we go to a lot of what we call DOAs, like dead on arrival, or like CPR in progress. And then these people die, and then the family's there, and we're supposed to be like, I don't know if we're supposed to, but I feel like there's this natural expectation that, we're supposed to be like, I'm sorry for your loss. And I feel that way, like these people die, and it's terrible, but I have a very hard time with conveying that. I am not very empathetic. So I don't really know what the solution to that is. I don't know if it's just me being sucked into this job and I'm just too professional about it. I don't know if I'm supposed to convey emotion. But anyways.
Yeah. So so right after that, then what happened? What's the process after that?
So in a police shooting, so the shooters are kind of immediately separated. So the guys that weren't involved directly with the shooting kind of take over the scene, and the guys that shot or fired are taken away and separated. And there's just this process where like they take your gun and they check your rounds to make sure you're using, department issued ammunition and that your weapon is hasn't been modified in any crazy way. They got to check all that stuff out.
What's the purpose of that? Just to protect, like, in case there was a malfunction with the weapon or something, or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just to make sure you're adhering to policy, because the department doesn't want something bad to come on them, or you, but they want to make sure your weapon's within policy. They want to make sure that you did things right. That you're not using some homemade hollow point rounds that you cut up in your basement or something, that you're using the appropriate ammunition.
Okay.
But then the process goes that you have to be interviewed, right? And they have to do this formal investigation, because in a weird, well, essentially when a cop, if you shoot somebody, you are essentially charged with murder.
So you're essentially guilty till proven innocent, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
But being that this is part of your job, it's not treated that way. So, but they still have to go through the same process of showing legally what you did was the right thing and okay. So in this scenario, basically they have to do these interviews, and there's a regional investigation team that comes out, because the department obviously can't investigate their own shootings. So there's a critical incident team that is comprised of various members of various departments in the metro area. They get called out, and they come out and are responsible for handling the officer-involved shooting. So they do all the interviews. In this case, it was pretty late at night. I think the shooting itself happened at like close to midnight. And we were there till like 5 or 6 or 7 in the morning. But we didn't do the interviews, so they kind of gave us the option to either do the interview at that moment, or we could all meet the next day, go home, get some sleep, and then come back and do these interviews. So that's what I think everybody did, which is smart. They don't. It's taken a few years, but they recognize now that right after these critical incidents, not everybody's minds are right, and you may remember details a lot differently than they occurred. And same thing in the military. You go through these things and you think you remember the way they happen, and that may not be how they happen. But
especially since you said earlier your shift was probably supposed to be over around 02, right? Is that what you said?
This time I was actually on graves at this time, but
okay.
But we were supposed to get off at like 5 in the morning, and we were there till 7. But 14 hours in, that's a long day.
It is, yeah.
So anyways, they recognized this, and we ended up coming back the next day and doing our interviews. So then from that point, you get put on administrative leave, which basically means you are not allowed to come into work because you're under investigation. You're still getting paid because, again, this was something that is potential. This is something that can potentially happen as part of your job, so they recognize that. So you're at home, you're getting paid, but you're not allowed to be at work because you're under investigation for basically murdering somebody. And every department's different. For us, for this instance, it was 2 weeks. I was off for 2 weeks, and I think there's kind of an interesting push with that, because half of this, well, not half, but like 5 or 6 of the SWAT guys, the SWAT team, was involved in the shooting. So they're out like 5 or 6 guys from the SWAT team. So there's kind of this push to get
everybody who was involved with it gets put on this admin stuff, right?
Basically, everybody that fired.
So how do they cover? Do they have a plan to cover down for that? Like, let's say all 5 of you were on the same, or 6 of you were on the same shift. Do they have enough people to spread around where they can cover down on it? No, I'm assuming from your laugh, no.
Well, yeah, they have since made some changes. So this shift that I was on at the time, like, oh man, like out of 10 of us on the shift, like 6 of us were SWAT guys. And since that point, they've mandated that the SWAT guys have to be broken up across all the shifts and whatnot. So they learned some things from this. So anyways, I'm off for 2 weeks. They basically clear me. They determined it was a good shoot. We followed policy. We were justified in the decision we made. So we're brought back to work. And I come back in, and worked this shift, which was a Sunday, and at the very end of that shift, I get into another shooting.
Wait. So you got back after the 2 weeks, and then how long ago from you basically going back to work did this other one happen?
My first day back.
Oh my gosh.
So I came in, that Sunday they called me and they're like, hey, you've been cleared to come back to work. Can you come in tonight? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. And that shift goes, and I think we were set to get off at like 5:30 or 6 in the morning, something like that. And like 30 minutes before the end of my shift, one of these officers out on patrol finds a homicide suspect. Well, he was wanted. He had warrants for attempted homicide and home invasion. Basically, what had happened with this case is this guy had broken into somebody's house, shot this guy on the couch like 7 times, and left. And this guy that got shot lived somehow, and was able to knew this guy and was able to identify him. So, anyways, this guy has warrants out for this. Well, this officer finds him at a adult store of all places at like 5 in the morning. And we know there's like it's a 2-level adult store, and the top level, I don't need to go into all the details. Basically, has rooms that you can rent out and use your imagination. They do whatever they want.
Gotcha.
But so we know he's in the building, or we really think he's in the building. So our cop, basically, the guy finds this guy's car in the parking lot, and the warrant is attached to the car. So we have a pretty good idea that he's in the building. So a couple guys go in and they're asking the clerk, like, "Hey, have you seen this guy?" We pull up pictures of him. And as we're doing this guy is walking down the stairs. Looked a little different. So they didn't know right away that it was him. But they kind of play it off like they don't know, they don't pay any attention to him, right? But then this guy walks out, and another officer that was sitting outside says, "Hey, this dude came out and he freaking took off running." So we're like, "That's our guy." So we give chase. There's this big truck stop that's right next to this adult store. So the guy's running through the truck stop, and he's zigzagging through the semis that are all parked, and we lose him. Come up to this property fence, and the officer hops the fence. And just like I can't explain this cop. He's been a cop forever. He knows how these guys think. And he hops this fence, and he looks over to this dark area behind a dumpster, basically. And he's like, "I bet he's over there." So
you were with this guy?
No. So I'm driving to the scene at this point.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And initially we were going to set up a perimeter because this guy had ran, and we were going to set up a perimeter to try and get him. But this cop that was chasing him on foot looks into this corner and he's like, "I bet he's there." And he goes over, and sure as shit, the guy's hiding in this corner. So he airs that over the radio, and we basically get this guy trapped in. And it's kind of hard to describe. It's like there's this stairway into this building, like an industrial building, this tiny little stairway, and it's right behind this concrete square where these dumpsters go in, like the big rollout dumpsters. They
Yeah.
sit in this concrete area. Anyway, so he's under the stairway behind this concrete structure, and we basically have him trapped. We've got officers on both sides of him, so he can't go anywhere. So we start challenging him to come out, and he's like, "Fuck you guys, I'm not coming out." And we're like, we start naming him. His name is Isaac. We're like, "Isaac, come out of there." And he's like, "My name's not fucking Isaac." And he's trying everything. So we start talking to him. We're like, "Hey, dude, if you don't come out, we're going to get the dog. We're going to send the dog in there." And he's like, "You send a dog in here, I'm going to fucking shoot that dog."
People hate that dog, huh? People hate that's.
Oh,
that's got to be terrifying, though. Hopefully, I've never in a situation where that happens to me, but I can't imagine letting a dog go on a person.
Oh, it's something to watch, that's for sure. But I've got a big German Shepherd, and the thought of him freaking being angry and coming at me, it's terrifying. I don't know how these guys deal with it, but anyway, so he's not coming out, and then one of the officers is like, "I'm going to go get a beanbag shotgun," and he starts walking off, and so one of the officers on the opposite side of me sees that he has a gun, and he starts yelling at him to drop the gun, and then he tases him again. basically tries to tase him. Well, this dude, we later found out, was wearing a bulletproof vest. So the taser didn't connect because of this guy's vest that he was wearing. Well, as soon as the officer tases him, this guy raises his gun and starts shooting at the two officers on that side. So there's basically two officers on one side and then me and another officer on the other side of him. So he starts firing at those officers. He didn't know at the time that we were on the other side, so he sticks his head out like he's going to run our direction, sees us, and then retreats back under the stair and then sticks his gun out like just by itself and starts shooting at us. And then we basically, it's kind of hard to describe, it's a metal staircase. We really didn't have good visual of him, even though we were like 3 feet away from him.
Really? That close, huh?
Oh, yeah. He was sucked under the stairwell, so we didn't have any shots, basically. So as he keeps shooting rounds, he's squirming around, and he's kind of exposing like little parts of his body here and there. So I fire once. My buddy fires once. I think my buddy hit him in like the vest, and then he sticks himself out again, and I shoot him, and I hit him right in his thigh. And when he got hit in his thigh, he gave up. He dropped the gun and he started screaming. And it's kind of funny looking back on it. I mean, he was like, "You guys shot me," and one of the other officers was like, "Yeah, well, what do you think was going to happen?"
So the guy that went to go get the beanbag shotgun, did he ever come back or what?
Yeah, he did, and he was actually the guy that yelled at him, like, "What do you think was going to fucking happen?"
Okay.
So, anyways, he's shot. We make him crawl out from under the stairwell, and we get him out, and paramedics take him, and he gets taken into custody. He goes to the hospital, obviously, but I'm like, we wear body cameras, right? Mm-hmm. On body camera, I'm like, motherfucker! Like, this is my first night back, and getting another shooting. I'm like, they're gonna fire me or something.
So same protocol after that, like you guys.
Same thing happens, yeah. And this interestingly enough had happened. This guy ran into Denver's jurisdiction, so he crossed the border from Commerce City into Denver. So Denver ended up having to handle this investigation. Same thing. So we go through, we do the interviews, and we get put on administrative leave. And this time I was off for a month, and in a lot of scenarios, that can be a really hard time for cops because they're sitting for a month, not working, wondering this whole time if they made the right decision, And
yeah.
Fortunately for me, both of these shoots that I was involved in were clean. I mean, they were the first one the guy pointed a gun at us, the second one the guy was shooting at us. So,
yeah.
We were lucky that we didn't have to be worried. A lot of cops aren't that fortunate, and they may have been in a totally justified shoot, but it may not have been that clear cut, and they're sitting there wondering the whole time, am I going to get charged? Did I do the right thing? And these are decisions that are made in split seconds.
They're going to be scrutinized for forever,
Years. It took, so this last guy that we shot, it took 3 years for him to get sentenced. Which is ridiculous. I mean, he had his other case that he had to work through, like the warrant that we were initially going after him for.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't get sentenced until like March or April of 2020, and this was 2017.
For which part? The part shooting his friend,
for us.
or for you? Okay, for you guys' shooting. Okay, because that had to be done separately, right?
Yep.
He had the murder or the attempted murder charge or whatever he got, and then you guys' incident, right? Okay.
Yeah. So. He was sentenced just in 2020. But anyways,
so out of 6 weeks, out of 6 weeks, you technically only worked or did patrol for 2 days. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
That was like the last most significant event you've had to deal with.
Well, as far as like a critical incident, 2020 was so like I've alluded to a couple times. I'm a part of our SWAT team. When the riots kicked off in 2020 over the summer, Denver had some pretty crazy riots, and Denver basically was overwhelmed, and they put out like an all-call for help, basically, the first night of these riots.
So what does an all-call mean?
Basically, it means Well, they put it out for SWAT teams, but they basically any agency that can come down to Denver and help us, like, please come. That's basically what it was, because basically Denver's getting their ass kicked. And Denver's a big agency. They got like 1,200 cops on the street, I think, or maybe not that many on the street, but they're about no, I think they have about 1,200 on the street. But they're basically getting their ass kicked by these riots, and so they put out this call for anybody and everybody to come out and help them.
So when a call like that goes out, are you guys obligated or required to go, or is it a professional courtesy type thing?
It's a professional courtesy. We're not required by any means.
So does that get managed by, I guess, the person in charge? Like, if they can afford to send you, they will?
Yeah, basically. So our SWAT commander, gets in touch with the right people down in Denver, and they put this huge, like, ops team together, and command. I can't even explain how it's all set up, but it was chaotic. I mean, that first night, I can't even imagine how all that was working.
So, David, you actually went to Denver to go help out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so our team went down that first night, which was like, I think it was a Saturday. And we were getting bounced around. We were on a few, like, they put us at the Capitol building first, and then we kind of, like, we're walking, like basically through the streets, like trying to disperse these crowds. And I mean, it was a different experience.
David, I have so many questions for you. So if you got time,
yeah.
So the scene is that these riots are going on. What are you allowed to talk about? What basically the rules of engagement? Like, what were you guys told going on? If you could tell me that'd be great. If you can't, I understand also.
I think I can. So basically, we ditch our lethal weapons for the most part. I mean, everybody's got like a handgun still on them just in case, but like we're not carrying rifles just because this is kind of riot protocol. So we all we're gearing up with our less lethals and our beanbag shotguns, and we have these like paintball guns that shoot like pepper balls, like little paintballs filled with pepper spray, basically. And we got all sorts of various munitions and tools for this kind of stuff. But basically, it's like the second that the protests become hostile, that's when we start utilizing the gas and the munitions and all that kind of stuff. They can stand there and chant and and yell and do whatever they want, but the second that they start throwing stuff at us or basically engaging violently with us, that's when it becomes a riot that we have to disperse.
Did you have to face any? Did anybody get in your face specifically?
Not like. So we weren't that close.
Was it because you were on the SWAT team? You guys were kind of back a little bit from the guys with the shields and stuff.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, we were on the front lines for quite a bit, but there was just like kind of a natural gap between us and the protesters. We weren't like standing face to face where they were spitting in our face or anything. So that first night, I mean, we had like Molotovs thrown at us. We had on our line, we had like 3 of our guys. It like broke at their feet, and their feet caught on fire. They got put out right away, so it wasn't an issue. They didn't get hurt, but I mean, rocks and bricks and everything, you name it, was just getting hucked at us. And like as we were pushing this crowds through the streets, there were people like up on tops of buildings, like throwing stuff down on us. I remember we were walking by this parking garage, and there was like all these people on the second level of this parking garage that were just hucking stuff out at us. And we were walking up this hill, and they lit a dumpster on fire at the top of the hill and like pushed it down towards the police line. Obviously we saw it coming, so everybody said we get out of the way. But it was crazy.
Man,
and that
I can't imagine. You're in the United States, and you have to worry about this stuff.
Dealing with this crap. Yeah, I mean that's like and there's always been riots throughout our history, but it's such a small, isolated thing. I mean, the last time that anything was this big was in the race riots of like '92 in Los Angeles, but that was, after Rodney King got beat up. Mm-hmm. But again, that was pretty isolated to L.A. I mean, this is like nationwide that these are going on now. And so that first night we kind of retreat back to the Capitol building, and that was kind of our Alamo, and State Patrol had like dudes set up all over the roof of the Capitol, and we're on basically the steps of the Capitol, and there was like reports that this certain vehicle was going around like just shooting at cops randomly, like from a vehicle. A little bit before, one of these Denver trucks, Denver police trucks that had like rails on the outside of it, with like 10 cops all around these rails, got rammed by a car. So like I think 3 or 4 of these Denver cops were standing on these rails when they got rammed by a car. So they were putting out all this info, like, you know, keep an eye out open for these cars that are doing this stuff. And we were at the Capitol building, and kind of like I said, is our Alamo. You know, so anyways, that was the first night, and it kind of phased out by the morning time. So we go home, but then it kind of, for the next couple of days, it became like that was our job, because they knew that these riots were kicking up again. So like Sunday and Monday, we went back to Denver, and actually on that first night, Saturday night, unbeknownst to us, the rioters had attempted to take over one of the Denver police like substations, you know, like they did in Minneapolis. They had broken through the gates, and I think we're breaking into the building before they finally got repelled. So the second and third night, we got put at this substation, at Denver's substation, and that's kind of where we worked out of the next 2 nights.
You know, hearing that is incredible to me that happening in the United States, because, you know, you hear of small bases and little outposts in Afghanistan and Iraq that, you know, had the chance to be overrun. And you never ever, my mind would ever think that would happen, not just in one place but multiple places. People tried that in the United States, and I guess
domestically.
Really, what I'm wondering in my head when I'm trying to think about this and put myself in a situation, like, were you worried that there might not be any kind of level to how insane this might get? Like, at some point, was there like, this could get completely out of control and we could get overwhelmed?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know. You know, you think about these scenarios happening in Afghanistan. I think of Cop Keating and the Battle of Wanat. Is that how you say it? Wanat Valley, where like those 2 major bases got overrun. Not major bases, outposts. Yes. Instantly becomes a deadly force. You're fighting for your life, and you're killing everybody that is running at you. Right.
Right. Death blossom.
I translate that to these scenarios in the United States, and realistically, that's what it could come to. But could you imagine, like, the aftermath if that had happened? I mean, if cops just started laying waste to these protesters, I mean, that would be...
Well, so the reason why it's hard for me to understand or grasp is, like, I knew... So I've only been to Afghanistan, but I knew, like, no matter what situation we got into, like, eventually we could get the birds on station. There would be helicopters and possibly jets laying scunion to whatever was in front of us and doing that. And that there's no way that could happen in the United States. That would never happen. So you guys are in actually a worse situation, because there's not going to be the cavalry's going to come through and just start, you know, dropping what's in front of you.
And I think of, I don't know how much you know about stuff that happened in Minneapolis, but that police station got taken over. The last few cops that were there were stuck on the roof, and these protesters were lighting the police station on fire. They set this building ablaze while these cops were on the roof, and fortunately they were rescued by a helicopter. I mean, that happened in Minneapolis. You know, that's like something you hear about happening in Afghanistan or something. Right.
Yeah. Or Somalia or something like that.
Yeah. And these guys still didn't shoot anybody. But like, when you think about it, if you're stuck on the roof of a building and they're setting the building on fire under you, like, at what point do you start shooting people as to protect your life? Like, if you see that guy running up with, you know, a Molotov or something, like, he's going to be that last guy that sets this building ablaze. Like, do you shoot him to protect your life? Like, you're trapped.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't know how none of that played out in any of these protests, to my knowledge. But
well, so, you know, and my opinion is that you police officers, law enforcement officials have probably gotten so much training, and you just have to naturally try to be de-escalated, because it's going to end up in a bad way, potentially the other way, if it, you know, because everything's on tape now, you know.
Right. Oh yeah, and we're all wearing body cams, and there's reporters everywhere. So that was kind of a turning point in my career.
For the better or for the worse?
Well, initially for the worse. But like back when right after this happened, I became really, really sour towards law enforcement. Support for law enforcement was at an all-time low. Nobody liked cops, and I didn't get into this job to be liked. I came into this job to arrest bad guys, and I understand that most people don't like cops, but it was easy to work around that when you knew you had support on the back end. Like your command staff supported you. You knew that generally the justice system supported what you did. Generally, the justice system supports cops,
Mm-hmm.
and politicians generally support cops, and that disappeared in 2020. I mean, that went away. And after participating in these riots, I saw such like an ugly side of our civilization, like our country, that I almost left law enforcement. And then right after that, there's this radical politician in Colorado. I'm not going to name any names. You could Google it. But they started pushing this.
He or she.
Through.
We got to be.
Yeah, he or she, yeah. Started pushing this bill through that basically was tying cops' hands behind their backs and would not allow them to do anything. And it was subversive the way that it was basically pushed through under the radar, and they tried to get it pushed through without any without consulting with any of the law enforcement community across Colorado, like the state police officer board. Like normally all these voices have an impact on how these bills go because they want to get input from the police officers and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't do that. They were trying to squeeze this in under the radar and get it pushed through. And if that had passed in its original form, I feel strongly that like probably 75% of the police officers in the state of Colorado would have quit, like just hands down. Fortunately, this bill was intercepted, and we were able to. I say we, as the law enforcement community, were able to change it up a little bit. But I started kind of reevaluating things after that. I'm like, what can I do with myself? Like law enforcement, we're just not. It's not even about being appreciated. I give shit less about that. It's just we're not even allowed to do our jobs. Like when it comes to arresting people or charging people, it's like literally like people think that our country would be what it is without law enforcement, without a justice system in place. It would be. They have no idea what they're asking for, and that played out in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I mean, crime skyrocketed, and really across the entire country it has. But due to COVID, and then COVID through all this, we're so limited on what we can do, and you see it. And unfortunately, the true victims of all this are well, I said that wrong. The victims are really these people that rely on police, like the people that are really down with their lives and the people that are stuck in abusive relationships and the people that are being victimized by burglaries and home invasions and all this kind of stuff. Those are the people that are being affected by this,
Yeah. So obviously you're still a an officer, right?
Still doing it.
Okay. Where do you want to? Do you see yourself sticking it out? I would assume so, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to. I really do. I do feel passionate about this job, and it's always a pendulum effect with law enforcement. It just depends on who's calling the shots for this day and what politicians are in office, and we're way up, on this side that we're on right now, and it's possible that it could swing back the other direction. Unfortunately, there's no guarantees with that. But I look at this as a career, and I want to stick it out for the 20 plus years. And I've got a few special assignments within my department, and I enjoy that. I enjoy being on SWAT, doing the SWAT work that we do, and I have a couple instructor positions, and I enjoy that stuff. And when it comes down to like being out on the street doing my job, I really enjoy it. I really feel strongly about it. But
so David, so we talked about some serious stuff here. So maybe you could kind of what's probably one of the funniest or one of the most comical situations you found yourself in as a police officer? If you can narrow it down to one.
I don't, that's tough. I don't know that I have one moment that's.
Well, you got to have people have to say some probably pretty comical responses to stuff, even because I mean, again, I've not experienced anything you have, but when you watch like Cops or whatever, and they catch somebody who stole a car, and they say, or a bait car, they used to do this. They catch somebody that stole the car. Obviously, they have everything on camera. Then they're like, the guy'd be like, "It's my cousin's car," and you're like, "What's your cousin's name?" And they're like, "I don't know."
Oh, yeah, I've had a few of those. Trying to think of them off the top of my head is rough. We get people we arrest. I've arrested, oh God, I don't even know, hundreds of people, and you get those people that are just like, they're super high on whatever, you name it, and they say some crazy stuff. Oh, okay. I guess there's this one incident that kind of stays out. So we had this, I don't know how much you know about house music or like EDM. There's this guy called Bass Nectar. Have you ever heard of him?
I have not. I am pretty old.
Yeah. Brian knows about Bass Nectar, and Will. But anyways, he's this, it's one guy, he's like a DJ, and he makes all this like kind of techno music. Anyway, so he had a concert in our city. We have a soccer stadium, like a professional soccer team in Commerce City. But they use the stadium for all sorts of different things. And so they did a concert a couple years ago. And so we're driving around, I'm working at the concert. We're driving around in golf carts, and we get this call about a naked guy doing, effectively doing snow angels out in the dirt parking lot where there's no snow. So he's doing like dirt angels, if you will. But
okay.
So anyways, we start rolling that direction, and we're rolling up on him, and sure as shit, there's this guy. He is buck naked, laying on the ground doing dirt angels. And so there's three of us in this golf cart, and I'm already putting on my latex gloves because, like, I know he's freaking high on something. He's probably going to fight us because he's that high, and I'm just getting prepared. And I step off the cart, and I shine my light on him because it's at night. And I'm like, "Hey, dude, what's going on?" And he, like, springs up at me and rushes me and just socks me, like, punches me right in the side of the face out of nowhere. Like, I don't, to this day, I don't know how fast that happened, but I think it was also so unexpected that I was like, what the fuck just happened? And so anyway, he's like 130 pounds, so it didn't do anything to me. And so I tackle him right away, and we're wrestling with this naked dude on the ground, and I got him flipped over, and so I'm sitting on his ass, and like we're just trying to get him restrained, basically. Well, the paramedics were already there, so they come up and they shoot him up with this relaxant or something, and he calms down after a few minutes. But I forget, we had this commander come up to us, and as I'm sitting on this guy still, like sitting on his ass, this commander comes up, and he goes, "Hey, did you guys find any ID on him?" I'm like looking down at him. I'm like, what do I need to do? Like spread his butt cheeks? Like, where's this guy's ID going to be? But
it's pretty funny.
Still to this day. Well, backing up, when I tackled this guy, my partner that I was with goes to tase him. And with the taser, you have like the two functions. You have like the probes that shoot out, and then you can take out the probes and just use it as like a shock device, basically. Mm-hmm. So I tackled this dude, and my partner runs up to tase him, and frickin' jabs this taser right into my hand. So I get frickin' tased as I'm like wrestling with this guy, and it was just a shit show. The whole thing was a shit show. But
so do you go home and burn your clothes after sitting on top of a naked guy who's been rolling around in dirt, or?
No, we replace our uniforms every now and then, but no. Unfortunately, my poor wife gets stuck with dealing with that. I came home. I didn't even think about it after that guy we killed, the first guy. My uniform was soaked in blood. I had this guy's blood all over my uniform, and I came home and I gave her my uniform. I'm like, "Hey, can you get the blood out of this?" And I didn't even think about how dramatic of an experience that would be for her, And after the fact, she was pissed off at me, but. No, we probably should.
So, David, you've done it. So you've had a successful stint in the military. You're a successful police officer. So looking back and overall, if you were to speak to somebody who's getting out of the Army right now and doing an ETS, not a retirement, is there something you wish you would have done differently that you would tell somebody getting out now?
You know, I would say, and I think I heard somebody else say this, you really got to have a plan. You know, small thing I would say was have your frickin' finances in order, because that's just something that was not on my radar when I got out, and I had such a little idea of how much that would affect me, like as an adult. You know, I'm good to go now. You know, I've raised my credit score, but it took me years. I just didn't know how much of an impact that had. But no, big picture, you got to have a plan. I went out, I started school right away, and it may not have been like the best decision to start that soon, but it kept me focused, and I think that was probably the big thing. I know a lot of guys that get out and they kind of don't really know what they're going to do, and they don't have a plan, and they kind of just fall back into the rut that they were in. If they're, you know, I'm not saying they were in a rut, but they fall back into the same like pattern they were in before they joined the Army, and then it takes them a long time before they kind of get on their feet. So I think you got to get out with a plan, having an idea of what you're going to do. I think that'd be my biggest recommendation.
Well, hey, I really appreciate your time here. Your story is great. I can't wait to share it with everybody that listens to this. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, I feel like I dragged it on a little bit.
Sorry no, you're great, man. This is perfect, actually. So it's if you ever need anything, hit me up. I know you got Brian and Will there, but you know if you ever something. Anyway, but hey, and again, I really appreciate what you're doing for all those guys out in Colorado every day, you know, on the street and stuff. So, may not be said enough to you guys, but we, honestly, really, I don't know how you guys do it, especially with what's going on, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk.
No problem.